Karina baby, for the 11th, we have To a Snail. Snail, snail, move faster. Your slowness will end in disaster. Mrs. Blackbird on your trail. Please go faster, little snail. Next we have Aladdin and the Lamp. Hop aboard the magic carpet for an exciting trip to the mysterious land of ancient Persia. A boy named Aladdin is about to find a lamp. Not just an ordinary lamp, mind you, a special lamp, complete with a genie. Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp, Andrew Lang. There once lived in Persia a boy called Aladdin. One day he was playing in a street. A stranger asked him his age, and if he was not the son of Mustafa, the tailor. I am, sir, replied Aladdin, but he died a long while ago. The stranger fell at his neck and kissed him, saying, I am your uncle, and I know you from your likeness of my brother. Go to your mother and tell her I am coming. Aladdin ran home and told his mother of his newly found uncle. Indeed, child, said she, your father had a brother, but I always thought he was dead. However, she prepared supper and bade Aladdin seek his uncle, who came laden with wine and fruits. He told Aladdin's mother not to be surprised and not seeing him before, as for 40 years he had been out of the country. The next day he led Aladdin a long way outside the city gates until they came to 2 mountains divided by a narrow valley. We will go no further, he said. I will show you something wonderful. Gather up sticks while I kindle a fire. When the fire was lit, he threw on it a powder he had with him, and at the same time saying some strange words. The earth trembled and a little and opened in front of them, disclosing a square, flat stone with a brass ring in the middle to raise it by. Aladdin turned to run away, but his uncle caught him and gave him a blow that knocked him down. What have I done, uncle? He said piteously. Whereupon his uncle said more kindly, fear nothing, but obey me. Beneath the stone lies a treasure that is to be yours, and no one else may touch it, so you must do exactly as I tell you. At the word treasure, Aladdin forgot his fears and grasped the ring as he was told. The stone came up quite easily, and some steps appeared. Go down, said his uncle. At the foot of those steps you will find an open door leading into 3 large halls. Tuck up the rope and go through them without touching anything, or you will die instantly. The halls led into a garden of fine fruit trees. Walk on till you come to a niche in the terrace where stands a lighted lamp. Pour out the oil it contains and bring it to me. He drew the ring from his finger and gave it to Aladdin, bidding him prosper. Aladdin found everything his uncle said, gathered some fruit off the trees, and having got the lamp, arrived in the mouth of the cave. His uncle cried out in a great hurry, make haste and give me the lamp. This Aladdin refused to do until he was out of the cave. His uncle flew into a terrible rage, and throwing some more powder on the fire, he said something, and the stone rolled back into its place. The man had only pretended to be Aladdin's uncle. He was really a cunning magician who had read in his magic books of the wonderful lamp that would make him the most powerful man in the world. Though he alone knew where to find it, he could receive it only from the hand of Aladdin. Now, since he could not force the boy to give him the lamp, he returned to Africa, whence he had came. Aladdin remained in the dark, crying and lamenting. At last he clasped his hands in prayer, and in so doing rubbing his ring, which the magician had forgotten to take from him. Immediately the genie rose out of the earth, saying, What whilst thou with me? I am the slave of the ring, and I will obey in all things. There's Aladdin at the bottom of the stairs with the genie. Aladdin fearlessly replied, Deliver me from this place, whereupon the earth opened, and he found himself outside. When he came home, he told his mother what had passed, and showed him the lamp and the fruits that had been gathered in the garden, which were in reality precious stones. Then he asked for some food. Alas, child, he said, I have nothing in the house, but I have spun a little cotton, and we will go and sell it. Aladdin bade her keep her cotton, for he would sell the lamp instead. As it was very dirty, she began to rub it, that it might fetch a high price. Instantly a genie appeared and asked what she would have. She fainted away, but Aladdin snatched the lamp, said boldly, Fetch me something to eat. The genie returned with some golden bowls, 12 gold plates containing rich meals, 2 gold cups, and a bottle of wine. Aladdin's mother, when she had come to herself, said, Whence comes this splendid feast? Ask not, but eat, replied Aladdin. So they sat at breakfast till it was dinner time, and Aladdin told his mother about the lamp. When they had eaten all the genie had brought, Aladdin sold one of the gold plates, and so on, till none were left. He then summoned the genie, who had given him another set of plates, and thus they lived for several years. One day Aladdin heard an order from the Sultan proclaiming that everyone was to stay at home and to close their shutters while the princess, his daughter, went to and from the bath. Aladdin was seized by a desire to see her face, which was very difficult to see, as she always went veiled. He hid himself behind the door of the bath and peeped through the chink. The princess lifted her veil as she went in, and looked so beautiful that Aladdin fell in love with her at first sight. He went home and told his mother that he loved the princess so deeply he could not live without her, and meant to ask her father for her hand in marriage. His mother, on hearing this, burst out laughing, but Aladdin at last prevailed upon her to go before the Sultan and carry his request. She fetched a napkin and laid it in magic fruits from the enchanted garden, which sparkled and shone like the most beautiful jewels. The Grand Vizier and the Lords of Council had just gone into the palace hall as she arrived. So she went up to the foot of the throne and remained kneeling until the Sultan said to her, Rise, good woman, and tell me what you want. She hesitated, so the Sultan bade her speak freely, promising to forgive her beforehand for anything she may say. She then told him of her son's violent love for the princess. I prayed for him to forget her, she said, but in vain. He threatened to do some desperate deed if I refused to go and ask your majesty for her hand of the princess. Now I pray you to forgive not me alone, but my son Aladdin. The Sultan asked her kindly what she had in the napkin, whereupon she unfolded the jewels and presented them. He was thunderstruck, and turned to the vizier, said, What sayest thou? Ought I not to bestow the princess on one who values her at such a price? The vizier, who wanted for his own son, begged the Sultan to withdraw her for 3 months, in the course of which he hoped his son would contrive to make a richest present. The Sultan granted this, and told Aladdin's mother that thou hast consented to the marriage. She must not appear before him again for 3 months. Aladdin waited patiently for nearly 3 months, but then his mother, going into the city to buy oil, found everyone rejoicing and asked what was going on. "Do you not know," was the answer, "that the son of the Grand Vizier is to marry the Sultan's daughter tomorrow?" Breathless, Aladdin's mother ran and told him, and he sent her to remind the Sultan of his promise. The Sultan said to her, "Good woman, your son must first send me 40 basins of gold, brim-filled of jewels, carried by 40 black slaves, and as many white ones, splendidly dressed. Tell him that I await his answer." The mother of Aladdin bowed low and went home, thinking all was lost. She gave Aladdin the message, adding, "He may wait long enough for your answer." "Not so long, mother, as you think," her son replied. "I would do a great deal more than that for the princess." He summoned the genie, and in a few moments the 80 slaves arrived and filled up the small house and garden. Aladdin made them set out to the palace, followed by his mother, who presented them to the Sultan. He hesitated no longer, but said, "Good woman, return and tell your son that I wait for him with open arms." She lost no time in telling Aladdin, bidding him make haste, but Aladdin first called the genie. "I want a scented bath," he said, "richly embroidered clothes, and a horse surpassing the Sultan's, and 14 slaves to attend me. Because this I desire 6 slaves beautifully dressed to wait on my mother, and lastly 10,000 pieces of gold in 14 basins." No sooner said than done. Aladdin mounted his horse and passed through the streets. The slaves strode gold as they went. When the Sultan saw him, he came down from his throne, embraced him, and led him into a hall where a feast was spread, intending to marry him to the princess that very day. But Aladdin refused, saying, "I must build a palace fit for her," and took his leave. Once home, he said to the genie, "Build me a palace that is the finest marble, set with the precious stones. In the middle you shall build me a large hall, each side having 6 windows. There must be stables and horses and grooms and 100 slaves. Go and see about it." The palace was finished the next day, and the genie carried Aladdin there and showed him all his orders fulfilled, carried out even to the laying of the velvet carpet from his palace to the Sultan's. Aladdin's mother then dressed herself carefully and walked to the palace with her slaves. The Sultan sent musicians and trumpets and cymbals to meet them, and the air resounded with the music and cheers. At night the princess said goodbye to her father and set out for the carpet for Aladdin's palace, with his mother at her side and followed by 100 slaves. After the wedding had taken place, Aladdin let her into the hall where the feast was spread, and she supped with him, after which they danced till midnight. They lived in peace and contentment for several years, but after a while in Africa the magician remembered Aladdin, and by his magic arts discovered that instead of perishing in the cave, he had escaped and had married the princess, with whom he was living in great honor and wealth. He knew that the poor tailor's son could have accomplished this only by means of the lamp, and he traveled day and night till he reached the capital of Persia. As he passed through the town, he heard people talking everywhere about a marvelous palace. "Forgive my ignorance," he said. "What is this palace you speak of?" What is this palace you speak of? "Have you not heard of Prince Aladdin's palace?" was the reply. "The greatest wonder of the world. I will direct you if you have a mind to see it." When he saw the palace, the magician knew that it had been raised by the genie of the lamp. He brought a dozen copper lamps, but put them into the basket and went to the palace crying, "New lamps for old!" and followed by a jeering crowd. The princess, sitting in the hall of 24 windows, sent a slave to find out what the noise was about. The slave came back laughing, so the princess scolded her. "Madam," replied the slave, "who can help laughing to see an old fool offering to exchange fine new lamps for old ones?" Another slave, hearing this, said, This is an old one on the countenance there that he can have." Now this was the magic lamp which Aladdin had left there when he went hunting. The princess, not knowing its value, laughingly bade the slave to take it and make the exchange. She went and said to the magician, "Give me a new lamp for this." He snatched it and bade the slave take her choice. Amid the jeers of the crowd, there he went out of the city gates to the lonely place, where he remained till nightfall. When he pulled out the lamp and rubbed it, the genie appeared, and the magician carried him, together with the palace and the princess in it, to Africa. The next morning, Sultan looked out the window towards Aladdin's palace and rubbed his eyes, for it was gone. He sent 30 men on horseback to fetch Aladdin in chains. They met him riding home, bound him, and forced him to go with them on foot. He was brought before the Sultan and begged to know what he had done. "False wretch," said the Sultan, "come hither," and showed him from the window to the palace, where his palace had stood. Aladdin was so amazed that he could not say a word. "Where art the palace and my daughter?" demanded the Sultan. "For the first I am not so deeply concerned, but my daughter I must have, and you must find her, or lose your head." Aladdin begged for 40 days in which to find her, promising if he failed to return and suffer death at the Sultan's pleasure. He prayed. His prayer was granted, and he went forth sadly from the Sultan's presence. For 3 days he wandered about like a madman, asking everyone who had become of his palace, and they only laughed and pitied him. He came to the banks of the river and knelt down to say his prayers before throwing himself in. In doing so, he rubbed the magic ring he still wore. The genie he had seen in the cave appeared and asked him his will. "Save my life, genie," said Aladdin, "and bring me my palace back." "This is not in my power," said the genie. "I am only the slave of the ring. You must ask the slave of the lamp." "Even so," said Aladdin, "but thou canst take me to the palace and set me down under my dear wife's window." He at once found himself in Africa under the window of the princess, where he fell asleep from sheer weariness. Next morning she looked out and saw him. She called to him to come to her, and great was their joy at seeing each other again. After he had kissed her, Aladdin said, "I beg of you, princess, before we speak of anything else, for your own sake and mine, tell me what has become of an old lamp. I left it on the countenance in the hall, of 24 windows when I went hunting. Alas, she said, I am the innocent cause of your sorrows, and told him of the exchange of the lamp. Now I know, cried Aladdin, that we have to thank the magician for this. Where is the lamp? He carries it about with him, says the princess. I know, for he pulled it out of his robe to show me. He wishes me to break my faith with you and to marry him, saying that you were beheaded by my father's command. Aladdin confronted her and went into the nearest town, where he brought a certain powder. Then he returned to the princess, who let him in by the little side door. Put on your most beautiful dress, he said to her, and receive the magician with smiles, leading him to believe that you have forgiven him. Invite him to sup with you, and say you wish to taste the wine of this country. He will go for and some, and I will tell you what to do while he is gone. She listened carefully to Aladdin, and when he left her, arrayed himself gaily for the first time since he had left Persia. Then she recognized the magician, saying, I have made up my mind that Aladdin is dead, and that all my tears will not bring him back to me. So I am revealed to mourn no more, and therefore invite you to sup with me. But I am tired of the wines of Persia, and would gladly taste those of Africa. And there's the magician taking him to his palace. The magician flew to his cellar, and the princess put the powder Aladdin had given her in her cup. When he returned, she asked him to drink to her health in the wine of Africa, handing him her cup in exchange for his, in a sign that she was recoiling to him. She set her cup to her lips while he drained his to the dregs, and fell back in a deep sleep. The princess then opened the door to Aladdin, who took the lamp from the sleeping magician and summoned the genie. He bade him carry the magician outside, and then transported the palace and all of it back to Persia. This was done, and the princess felt only 2 slight shocks, and could hardly believe she was at home again. The Sultan, who had been sitting in his closet mourning for his lost daughter, happened to look up and rubbed his eyes, and there stood the palace as before. He hastened there, and Aladdin received him in the hall of the 24 windows, with the princess at his side. After all, Aladdin and his wife lived in peace. He succeeded the Sultan when he died, and reigned for many years, leaving behind him a long line of kings. Anything can happen. It's one of these things in life. Anything can happen in life, right? You think that the balloon's gonna go up because there's helium in it, and it goes down because there's not. Or you think that something's going to not bounce, and it tends to bounce. Or you think that something's not going to shatter, and it breaks. This life is just what it is, and you just have to take it as it comes and just be okay with it. Let's do... We sit and watch the rain as it falls from the sky, and we are glad to be inside where it is warm and dry. Oh yes, I do love the rain. It keeps the earth so clean and helps the pretty flowers grow from the mountains to the streams. Karina, baby, I love you so incredibly much. I miss you. I hope that you're having a great day today.